Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And this week, we have the great pleasure and privilege of having Chad Parker from Texas, who is a preeminent trial lawyer and I think a great marketer. So, Chad, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I usually don't get into the whole reading your bio because I have to read it and it sounds bland, So I just want you to tell me your story. Tell me how you got into law, how you evolved into a trial lawyer and to your present firm, and we'll take it from there.
All right. To start with, my dad was a lawyer. My dad was an insurance defense lawyer. Both myself and my brother are lawyers. We worked for my dad for many years as insurance defense trial lawyers. Okay. I was one for about 20 years. I was board certified in personal injury trial law after the first 5 years because back in the 90s, insurance companies quit paying 3 times the medical and the trials really went up. So, I came up and was the beneficiary of that. Met a lot of people, developed a lot of relationships, but at the same time was very competitive. And the only way to compete against a plaintiff's case is to know the medicine better than the plaintiff attorney, right? And be able to cross-examine the plaintiff's treating physician. And so I think it was just out of sheer competitiveness that I kind of developed, a strong understanding of the medical and a way to defend. Now, ultimately, I think that's become a huge strength for me as a plaintiff attorney now. And so, what I did was, it's hard to transition when you have a family, when you have a lifestyle. You can't just quit your job as a defense lawyer and say, hey, I'm going to be a plaintiff lawyer now. There's overhead, there's advertising cost. I mean, all of you who are listening probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but I essentially went to work for a guy who I used to be against, who was older, had a lot of business. I worked with him for 3.5 years. I saved my money. I plotted out my plan, which included developing, a hook, which I felt I needed. Don't get hurt twice being it. And then I was exclusively on my own in August of 2016 when I first started to advertise on television. And, I'm exclusively a plaintiff's personal injury lawyer. I have been. Made a profit every single year, and it's gone well for me, and I'm very fortunate.
I was talking to you prior to this, and I really, really like this don't get hurt twice. How did you come up with that?
Any defense lawyer will understand what I'm about to say. After working for insurance companies for a while, you just, you almost are, you don't like them. You don't like their business practices. And you really see how they run over people early in cases without lawyers, with bad lawyers, people representing themselves. I started jotting down on a piece of paper. The first thing I jotted down was, don't get run over twice, thinking about a car wreck, right? And I was like, it doesn't sound just right. And so then it came to me, don't get hurt twice. That is, hurt could be a little bit more flexible of a word. And also it is exactly one of the buzzwords for car wreck cases. And so there it was. And then I reached out to somebody who I knew who did the kind of work that could go get it trademarked for me.
So you got it trademarked. Yeah, I was telling you, me being an entrepreneur, I said I would be licensed that out in the markets I didn't compete in. And then you said, what did you say? You said you're doing it.
Well, yeah, I'm fortunate. I have a childhood friend who has a big marketing background and a studio, and he's the one that said, hey, you need to try to sell this. He said, there's like 200 TV markets in the US and you're just in one of them and yours is like number 90. And so we've been working on that, and we're trying to figure out the best avenue to reach out to lawyers who might, have a history of doing well, or somebody who's starting off who really just can't get any traction in their market, separating themselves as a person or a brand, away from the competition.
Yeah, well, I think that's smart. Well, you just did it today. This is one way you're going to get out, because we get about 700-800 downloads every week. So you're going to get some traction, I promise you.
Well, we'll be happy to talk to anybody about that and, explain how well it's worked for us.
Yeah. Well, first I want to ask you this. A lot of times I'll be coaching lawyers or in my masterminds. And if I find out that they've been on the defense side, I always tell them, I said, you really need to play this up because this is a great differentiator because you know the secrets. You know how the insurance companies work. Do you use that in any of your marketing?
Yes. Some of the times I talk about and say, I was the insurance company's trial lawyer for 20 years. Okay. And you know how in advertising, you can't make a guarantee. So you have to be real careful under the state bar rules.
Right.
So I'll use words like, I may have a perspective other lawyers may not have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's smart. I think you're a smart marketer, and that's why I wanted you on the show. So tell me, when you made that move, you said you had worked, 20 years with your dad, I guess. And is that firm still going on, or have they?
There was big volume in the law practices in Texas in the environmental cases. I mean, we had thousands of asbestos and silicosis cases. And then what's called an MDL law was passed. And that broke up all that volume. And those bigger firms started to break apart, And so my dad, my brother, and I essentially separated from what was a total of a 90 employee law firm at one time with 30 lawyers down to just the three of us and a couple of paralegals.
Right. Yeah, that's a big move. Yeah, things change, don't they?
Things have changed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but what it shows to me about you, Chad, is that you know how to pivot. I mean, look at you. You're doing probably better than you were doing when you were, 90 people. Probably. I don't know that, but I'm sure you are.
Yeah, by about 5 or 6 fold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's not even close.
Yeah, well, that's great. So tell me this. How do you get these cases to come hire you? What do you do? What kind of marketing do you do?
I do a lot of things. But my dad was born and raised here in Tyler, Texas, and so was I. In a market that's 110,000 people in the city, 250,000 in my county, maybe I've got a little more name recognition than, say, the average guy in a 500,000 person market. But, I thought, and I told you before we started that I thought, I use instincts instead of people trying to sell me because advertising costs real money, right? It's real overhead. So what I did first was I put up billboards because one, I'm obviously bald and I've got a set of glasses. And I thought maybe, people would recognize me. People would drive that same drive every day. It'd be the fastest way for me to impress upon them that I was a personal injury lawyer. And from there, of course, I've done television. I have a lot of, TV commercials that I've made. I enjoy making those. I tried a little radio. I didn't find that really effective, honestly, because you'd be surprised how many people told me when they would see me all the time that they see me everywhere and they hear me on the radio, even though I'm not on the radio. And it's weird. What people say, you're everywhere, no, I'm really not everywhere, and I did something different. I went to digital last, which most people think that's foolish. But for my specific market, it just worked for me, and then I got to where, plus or minus, I'm getting the same amount of cases every month, plus or minus. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
So how many lawyers, how many people you got in your law firm now?
Well, it's funny, if you can believe this, it's just me. I had as many as 2 associates at one time, primarily one, but, he moved off to Dallas to be with his girlfriend. And I carried over a defense practice staff, which meant it's a different staff than a traditional plaintiff lawyer staff.
Right.
And of course, I cared about them, I wanted to keep them. So I have more staff and I'm better able, I think, to handle more things with quality than getting a case in and giving it to this lawyer, letting them take a third and they go work it and I never see it again, right?
Right.
I mean, not only do I not develop the relationship with the client because they didn't work with me, I don't know what's going on. So right now, I'm a pretty centralized and organized one-man firm.
So I would take it then, if you're doing all this with the billboards and the TV, that you're kind of picky about the kind of cases you take, I would think.
Well, I truly enjoy helping people and feel like, as a plaintiff's attorney, I'm in a unique position to help people, because what I can do is help somebody that really needs help, even if I'm not going to get anything. And there are many instances where, let's say somebody was killed, okay? And I've had a bunch of these, and there's only 30,000 insurance, and I can decide to take no fee, a little fee. I can do what I want, but everything comes back to you, and I'm a big believer in that.
Me too.
And so, when you say picky, I say, yeah, I don't take the no property damage cases, but I might take a lot that lawyers won't take because it's going to be too much work. They're not going to make any money, but I just see that as an opportunity. That's marketing.
Yeah, it's I like that. It's I like your style, my friend.
If you care about people, right? Lawyers have a terrible reputation for being greedy and selfish. And I don't think I'm either one of those. And so if I have a staff of 8 and 9 people around here, I can help anybody I truly want to, and it never impact me at all in a negative way.
Yeah, because, there's cases where you just write one letter and you get the policy limits. I've had those that I just could not, in my good conscience, charge a full fee. I don't know. And people thought I was crazy, but I'm like you. I say it'll come back. It'll come back. I promise you.
How about this? I've never charged 40% on any case in my career.
Really?
How about that? I charge 38% as the trial. It doesn't change. I tell them, hey, if we settle after I file suit, or if I have to try and take the jury verdict, you're paying me 38%. You're not paying me a progressive scale, 45, 50, just because I think that's too much of their case. Now, I know lawyers hate to hear that, but that's just how I feel about it. They don't have to do it.
No, I understand where you're coming from. So when you went out on your own, you saved up your money, went on your own. Was there any surprises, any things that took you off guard that you hadn't planned for?
I was fortunate. The thing that somebody who's not been a plaintiff lawyer has to learn is all the little things about the practice that you don't know, okay? Some of it's law related, some of it's just administrative, related. Some of it's just dealing with the insurance company from the different side, and also knowing how to create an advantage for your clients with things like, PIP and hospital reductions and medical reductions for the providers. And, if you work hard, your client nets all that money. If you're just kind of lazy and you don't get much of a reduction, well, that doesn't come out of your pocket, that comes out of theirs.
Right.
And that's the most difficult thing about the practice now, is dealing with the healthcare entities.
Yeah, it's got crazy out there, hasn't it? It really has. I mean, and trying to even trying to get medical records, and trying to get them cheaply. It seems like they want to fight you on it all the time.
And the hospitals, they have a lien in Texas, property right, which means, they're charging, huge numbers for CT scans and things of that nature, which then you're left dealing with. And, some of them will work with us pretty good, and some of them won't.
What would you tell PI lawyers out there, personal injury lawyers, that they should know about the insurance companies, because you've been doing it, you did it for 20 years, that they probably did not realize?
That's a good question. And, I've heard a lot of different opinions from what I'm about to say about this, from plaintiff lawyers that are experienced and good people, good lawyers. But, I write all my own demands. And I know that sounds crazy, okay? And I wrote 43 last month, okay? I dictate, so it's a lot easier to have somebody who's a fast typer. But I believe language and effort translate into a signal to an adjuster that this is a more serious lawyer here. This is a more serious case here than a paragraph that says, give me your limits and nothing else, okay? And I can just tell you from my past experience that insurance adjusters look at that. They're trying to settle some every month, right? They're not paid to go into litigation on every single claim that they get to work. So, they're looking at these ones and said, okay, which of these might not settle? Well, if you're in business like I am, you want to settle 80+% of your pre-lit cases, okay? That's called cash flow. You can't stand on principle and have case expenses and no money coming in. You're going to go out of business, right? So I say you write a demand, you always include photographs of the worst damage that you can show of the car, of the people, and you always use the word high velocity impact or high impact when you're talking about the crash, because the way they evaluate these, you're going to get more money if they categorize it as a high impact collision. So, things like that. A good explanation of the medical, like I told you about earlier, tells them this guy knows something, okay? He's going to be better than the next. So if my demand is not crazy, that is, in Texas, if I had 10,000 in medical and my demand was 50, that's crazy, okay? You're never going to get anywhere near that. So, why not start off and demand 22.5? Okay, if you know what you're going to settle for, they went to physical therapy for 3 months and that's all they've got, make yourself one of those ones that get settled each month if that's what you want.
That's interesting, because I've heard it the other. I mean, I've heard people argue the other way, that they don't look at anything, and you just they tear that sheet off and throw it in the trash can and just look at the records.
Yeah.
So
I know.
I've heard that.
That's what I'm telling you. I've heard people say it, but I swear to you, Ken, I've written demands that I, with a straight face, made them sound better than they were, and was shocked when I got the offer that I got. And I show it to the staff every time. I said, look, I don't care what people say about writing demands. If this demand doesn't get written and sent, we don't get this offer. There's no way we're getting this settlement here. But that's just my experience.
So let me ask you, what was the best advice you ever received when you were starting your plaintiff's law firm? What was the best advice you received from anybody, and who was it?
Well, I really didn't have a mentor except for the guy that I worked for 3.5 years. And it was unique because what I did for him was I did all the litigation. He got the cases. He was kind of in an 18-wheeler corridor in Texas. You know what I'm saying? Right. He had 2 offices in that corridor. So, the only case I worked on was 18-wheeler collision. And he kind of counted on me to do it. So I did all that. So what I really learned from him was more the negotiation part, because of course he did the negotiating and the mediations, and what he was willing to spend money on to develop the case, whether it be an expert or, whether it be somebody couldn't work and he loaned him money or whatever it was, I kind of learned the nuts and bolts there, but I got 3.5 years to teach myself on the job, what was working with other law firms, and not have the anxiety about spending money while I was doing it, which is really what I benefited from. Imagine if you work for somebody, you could hire any expert you want, didn't have to even think about your own books. That's the situation I was in for 3.5 years.
Right. So you say you got in digital last. Of all the different things you do, marketing, you do digital, you do billboards, you do TV, you got a great tagline. Well, what do you think works the best for you in Tyler, Texas?
Initially, of course, everybody that came in said, man, I see your signs everywhere. That'd be their phrase. Now, I've been, because advertising, I'm really a big believer. Plaintiff lawyers kind of dive in and dive out of the advertising market, right? They spend some money, they settle some cases, or they say, oh, we're doing good. And then they pull back. Maybe they're not spending any more money. And then they go, oh, I'm not getting as many cases. I need to spend some more. I just tried to plot out a strategy where I could stay consistent and stay in the market. And I just think billboards and TV for me here, kind of combined together to be the reason that I get the kind of traffic I do.
I saw that here that you were board certified. I guess that's board certified in Texas for trial, or is it national board certification?
No, it's Texas has a Texas Board of Legal Specialization, and mine's for personal injury trial law.
Okay. Do you leverage that? Do you make a big deal out of that in your marketing?
Yeah, it's always it's always, printed, down there where you can see it on the billboard and in the bottom, because, not all the lawyers are, board certified. That's kind of a distinguishing thing between some that have advertised and have gotten cases that, probably weren't as qualified.
Yeah, we had a mastermind member out of Memphis, and he did an ad, and he was board certified trial attorney in Tennessee, and he put down that less than 3% of all the trial lawyers in Tennessee are board certified, and I'm one of them. and it was it worked very well for him. And something that and our viewers and listeners could know that PILMA commissioned a study by an independent company to go back and look at people who had hired injury lawyers and what made them want to hire them and not want to hire them, and did advertising have an effect, did not, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but one of the questions was board certification was a factor for a lot of people. So that's something that our listeners can take away. I'm going to reveal all of it at the National Trial Lawyers show down in Miami. I think it's the end of January. I've got a special kickoff. They're going to let me have a whole morning, Sunday morning, before all the trial stuff starts on marketing. And one of my big deals is I'm going to share that report and what we can learn from it. But I think it's interesting. So what would you say if you were telling, so you've been here, you've got the experience, you've got the board certification, got a lot of great things. I can tell that you're dedicated to putting the work in it, to do the right thing, and you've got the right mindset, the client service. So I'm sure that you get a lot of referrals from past clients, don't you?
Oh my gosh.
What you do. I could just tell.
I mean, most of the people I get, it'll be like, well, I had a car right back here and I went to so-and-so, okay? And you can see a trend developed where none of these people ever go back to that lawyer or that other lawyer, right? Man, I'll see people 2 and 3 times in a 6-year window. So yeah, my clients, like you said, I take a lot of pride in people being happy if they're reasonable and if I can make them happy. Some people just cannot be made happy, okay?
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, but most people are pretty reasonable, and they can tell if you care, if you worked hard on their case, and if it was a good result for the circumstances that existed, if you communicate that. And that's the best way to get referrals, and the best way for people to tell other people, hey, I would go to J. Chad Parker if you get in a car wreck, and you need that out there working for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the best cases you'll get from referrals from old clients. I've always said that. That's the higher value cases, whatever. So we're getting close to running out of time. So if you had to give advice to some lawyer that was getting ready to want to get into marketing, or they've got the PI practice, but they're not really taking it to the next level, really hadn't, what would you tell them? What would be your advice to them?
Well, it would just depend. You have to evaluate your market, I think, first of all, right? I mean, if you were in San Antonio, Texas, you might have to spend $1 million a month or something to even break out, right? And so you have to craft a different strategy. It couldn't be that you were going to break out in television, okay? You'd have to go online, right? If you live in a suburb, of a larger area, then maybe you decide to put some billboards up just in the suburb, and you start in a smaller area and try to grow your way out, because once you can develop some cash flow, then it gives you other options, and then ultimately, if you have, it's just like my thing, don't get hurt twice. And I'm not even really trying to plug this, but I'm telling you that some of my clients, when they fill out the medical information about their lawyer, they just write in, don't get hurt twice. Okay. I'm not sure they know my name. And so, when they do that, it works, right? I mean, I've got several Hispanic clients that, some speak English, some don't, and they'll just put don't get hurt twice in the blank. And so that hook, helps, especially if your name is Jim Smith, okay? Because that's not very distinguishable from the market.
Right. Absolutely. Well, good. Anything that you want to share or some question you want me to ask you that I didn't ask you that you think would be helpful to our listeners?
Well, none other than if anybody's in a position to explore, I'm about to sell this brand outside of my markets and well without it, where there's no overlap. But if anybody's interested, they can look me up and find me and contact me. And, we're going to license Don't Get Hurt Twice in other television markets with all my commercials, the billboard production, basically a brand in a box if you don't have one and you have some reasonable means to take that on.
Okay, great. Hey, listen, give them the contact information.
Well, you can find me at, jchadparker.com. That's just a J with no period. You can find me at don'tgethurttwice.com. You can call me at 903-509-3400. I'm in Tyler, Texas. You can probably look me up on the internet and see some of the commercials. They're all on YouTube that, that you would have, or anyway, you can find me pretty easy, I think, if you try. I'm in Tyler, Texas.
All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim.
Well, until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.